When former President Donald Trump arrived at the courthouse this morning for the first day of his New York fraud trial, he came with his standard list of grievances. He stood outside the courtroom and called the case a witch hunt. He called New York's Attorney General a racist for filing suit against him. He said it's all a big conspiracy hatched by the U.S. Justice Department, which has no role whatsoever in this New York State case. What was telling, perhaps most telling, about Mr. Trump's courthouse rant this morning was the very first thing out of his mouth when he arrived. The very first thing he complained about was the perceived size of his business. He complained that the judge in this case had suggested that Trump is worth less money than Trump says. Trump told reporters as soon as he got to court this morning, "I'm definitely worth as much as I say I am. In fact, I'm worth way more than that. How dare you denigrate the size of my business." The trial that kicked off today in New York, because it is a civil suit, the stakes for Trump would appear to be lower than in the 4 criminal indictments he's facing in various jurisdictions. This civil case could decimate his business, but those criminal indictments could land him in prison. And yet, as the New York Times put it today, Trump is essentially treating this civil suit as if it is a 5th indictment. As a civil matter, he wasn't required to be there in court today, but he chose to be there, sitting at a defense table all day long, and then criticizing the New York Attorney General and criticizing the judge who's hearing the case when he passed reporters on the way in and out of the courtroom. At one point, he did seem to call on other people to join in his attacks on Attorney General Tish James when he said, quote, "You ought to go after this Attorney General." Seems like a red flag. It's not like this is the first major civil suit that Trump has faced. He never showed up in person for the civil case against him from writer E. Jean Carroll. That was a case in which she accused him of sexual assault and rape. The jury ultimately found Trump liable for sexually abusing Carroll, but Trump never bothered to show up during that trial. He cared enough to show up today, presumably because this case is about a thing that is famously more important to him than anything else, which is how big people think his business is, how rich people think he is. The judge in this case has already determined that Trump did fraudulently inflate his assets to make his net worth appear larger than it is. The trial that started today is just to determine what punishments the judge is going to impose. And those punishments could include barring Trump from ever again operating a business in New York. Joining us now is MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin, who was in the courtroom today. Lisa, I feel like you need a little bit of augmented pay for having suffered through this all day, but we're really glad you did, and it's nice to see you tonight.
Good to see you too, Rachel.
So one thing I do not understand is that this is a civil case, but it is not just against business entities, which could have their business certificates canceled. Those entities could be put into receivership or liquidated or somehow forfeited in terms of their assets. What does it mean to have individual people, persons, identified as defendants in a civil case? What are Donald Trump, his adult sons, the senior executives from his company personally facing by being named defendants in this case?
Well, one of the things that they're personally facing are a number of bans or bars on their ability to do business in the state of New York. And that would include anything from serving as an officer or director, or in the case of Alan Weisselberg, the former CFO, and Jeff McConney, the current controller, being financial control people of companies. The other thing that Donald Trump himself could face here, Rachel, is disgorgement, which is a fancy way of saying clawing back all the profits that he and his business entities got through this persistent fraud that the Attorney General has laid out through her 200-plus page complaint last fall and intends to further prove here at trial.
And that's money that they would take from the assets of the business entities involved, or that's something that the individual people named as defendants would be personally responsible for?
You know, it's not clear to me that all of the individual defendants are people from whom they could seek disgorgement. But the short answer to your question is yes. They could seek it likely from Donald Trump himself, and they could seek it from the business entities. And indeed, one of the reasons that Donald Trump fears the dissolution of his companies through this action is that it's not clear how liquid he is and how much money he has in cash to satisfy the judgment that the Attorney General is seeking here of at least $250 million.
Lisa, there was a lot of discussion today, I think started mostly by President Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, and then also Trump himself commenting on the same matter about the fact that this case is being heard not before a jury, but before just the judge. And there was a lot of discussion about that today, essentially saying that President Trump and his legal team made a mistake, that if they had, in fact, wanted a jury, which is what Trump was complaining about today, that they could have very easily gotten a jury instead of ending up just before a judge if they had only sent in the correct form. And a lot of people were kind of dunking on them today, saying they screwed that up just as a matter of basic paperwork. I gather from talking to you about this today a little bit that it isn't quite that simple. Could you explain how you see that as having gone?
Yeah, well, they didn't. They're right to say that they didn't request a jury trial, and neither, for that matter, did the Attorney General. But had they requested a jury trial, it's not clear that they could have gotten one, because the relief that the Attorney General is seeking here isn't the kind of relief that a jury can award. It's what's called equitable relief. And all of these bans and bars on the Trumps doing business here in New York, as well as the disgorgement, which is the clawing back of profits rather than the awarding of damages, that's only for a judge to award. So, yes, they could have tried, and maybe the judge would have even bifurcated the trial, allowing them a jury on liability and then just to him alone on the equitable portion. But as everyone noted today, they didn't try. And if you don't ask, you don't get.
MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin, thank you so much. I know this is going to be a bear to cover as this stretches out likely into some sort of 2 or 3 month trial schedule. Appreciate you being there for us, Lisa.
Thanks.